The pictures you're about to see were originally taken on an 8mm film. The purpose of taking it at that time was to give to posterity a little insight into the work the first parishioners of Our Lady's Assumption did in order to constitute a school for themselves. The parish itself was opened by the Archbishop Prendeville on the 11th of April, which that year was Palm Sunday, 1965. And the first Mass was offered up in the church that had been just newly constructed. The church at the time was much smaller than it is today, but when the first design was drawn, provision was made for extensions. When the time for extending came, the parish had grown so much that we extended it double the size beyond what was originally intended. That's why the church today has a bigger area on one side of the altar than it has on the other. The block was cleared on October 1966, and the builder who presented himself as an honorary builder was Alan McGlinchey. He was helped by Fergus Coleman and Ron Aldridge. You're just about to see now the pictures at the beginning of the preparation for the actual building of the school. After the block was cleared, Alan and Ron and Fergus Coleman pegged out the site, and that's where the picture opens, at that pegging out of the site. That's Ron Aldridge behind the car there, and Alan McGlinchey looking at the plans. That's Fergus Coleman in between, and they're about to set out the foundations for the building. Fergus is a carpenter, Alan was a builder, and Ron Aldridge was a surveyor. They spent all Saturday setting out the foundations. And on the following day, Sunday, the digging started. You'll see here the men, I think we had about 15 men scheduled to start the digging. That's Des McCullough on the left there, and Dennis Colley. I don't know who this is on the full left. That's Alan again on the right here. I think John Ryan is in there somewhere. And Ray Omaday is there. That's George Mazek in the back talking to Martin Meany. Martin is lifting his hat a lot there. George drew all the designs for us and drew them all free of charge, so that all the work that was being done on this was done by voluntary labor, and the only ones we had to pay were the bricklayers. That's Murray Gatty, that's Irene McCullough on the right, and Claire Dwyer on the left. They did the morning teas, and the only table they had at the time was a block of bricks. Here's the concrete being poured for the first foundations, and a week after that the steel went up. That was fitted by professionals. We weren't long enough in the trade at the time to do it. Here they're digging out the foundations. They sand from inside the building, because we were to put wooden floors in there, and we wanted to get the sand out while there were no walls built. That's John Hawke on the right, Tory Hawke in the middle, Tom Dwyer there, Pat Manny wheeling the wheelbarrow. That's Tom Dwyer there in the back. Bob Devereux, who has since moved out of the parish. That's John Hawke on the right, he's moved out. This girl was someone whom I instructed and received into the church some months previously, and she came out to see what the parish was like that I'd been appointed to, and she was thinking about becoming a nun, so she did actually join a convent, but only stayed for 3 months, and she left afterwards and is now married up in Northam. As you can see, the walls are nearing completion. That's Peter Wilson on the left. He has left the parish since too. He's living out in Woodvale or somewhere like that now. That's Jim Norton. They're cleaning the bricks here with sulfuric acid mixed with water, and that's Murray Gatty and Ray Turner. Ray Turner was one of the plumbers that were scheduled to do the work. That's Dennis Colley. He also worked on the plumbing, and Alan Smith is doing the digging there at the Big Hat. I can't see who the third one down is. This is George Power on the left here, and Kevin Thomas, and Graham Durkin, Bill Cassidy. Some of them I can't see their faces clearly enough to define. That's Maura Durkin, who was scheduled for the teas on that particular day. That's Graham, her husband, good with the wheelbarrow. At that time, we had no place to make the morning teas except in the porch of the church. And that porch is currently the present baptismal area. So you can see what a vast difference there is from now and then. That's myself helping to dig out the septic tank. The irony of it all, of course, is that since we got the sewerage in, we don't need the tank anymore. It was hard work, that. The temperature while we were putting in the leach drain was 104 degrees. So it really was hard work. These are some of the children who came along to play while the parents were actually working. One of the wonderful things about all of this was that many men in the parish learned a lot about trades that they'd never been associated with before. That's Ray Turner there, who did a lot of the deep sewerage for us. I can't see these fellas' faces to see who they are, but undoubtedly they were the carpenters. These were the bricklayers, and they were the only men whom we paid on the job. It wasn't economic to get free bricklaying, because if we got free bricklaying, they could only work 1 day a week. We had to get the school ready in time, and believe it or not, from the day the first brick was laid to the day the children walked in to the two classrooms was a mere 8 weeks. And that's the check now that we're paying to the bricklayers. They were Englishmen. They did a good job on it. Hasn't fallen down since. This Frank Kubicek, who was working on the roof at the time, I think he was in the electrical area. That Ray Waters on the left, I think. That's John Brophy putting in dip to stop the white ants. That's Bob Appleby. Here they're putting in the ceiling. That's young Hendricks. He's a principal down in the country now. John Wicks, who was one of our welders. On this particular day, the flooring went in the rooms, the ceiling went on, most of it, the electric wiring went in, the insulation on the roof went in, and the iron roof itself, most of that was put on all in one day, because we often had up to 40 and sometimes 50 workers there. On one particular day we asked for 40 and we got 56. That's Alan Dunsire, who was the other plumber, the other official plumber on the job. And that's Bill Hendricks, young man there. That's Bill Cassidy walking back to get a cup of tea. Where these men are sitting is now the extended wing on the church. Up to this point, as I said, we had no place to have morning tea, so we had to have it out in the open. And they sat on the iron that was later to become the roof. This is Richard Lamb on the left, and the two McGlinchey children, the children of Alan. That's Alison and Caroline. Both of them are married, and Richard is getting married in June of this year. This is Hans Lieber, who was our official painter. He was in charge of the painting throughout. That's George Power. And that's John Kennedy he was talking to there. Here they're putting down the floor. That's Ken Parker on the left. A lot of this work was done by men who had never done this type of work before, and yet because they were shown how to do it, they did it and did it very well. There's an overshadowing there where I took one picture over another. The film had wound back, and unfortunately, I suppose in a sense it's foreshadowing what the future will all be shadows in the future. That's myself and Des Bailey there, and Claire Dwyer. That's Claire McGlinchey, Alan's wife, with young Peter in the pram. He's grown up now to over 6 foot tall. That's Carmel Buckland. She has died since, God rest her. And Irene McCullough. That's Ray Tinkler. Here is Anton Hodes and somebody else. They're actually making the cupboards on the job that went into the first 2 classrooms in the school. That might be one of the Pacinis, I'm not quite sure. This is Ted Bowers on the right. He did all the granolithic work for us, and his partner. They were finishing off the floor just at the entrance to the toilets there. This is Mrs. O'Maday and Ray Tinkler. Kevin Thomas just inside the door of the church. That's Leonard Hendricks, little boy in the far end. He's grown up now as a family of his own. This is where we painted desks that we bought from the education department for 10 cents each, believe it or not. You wouldn't get a nail for it now, but we bought them at that time. They were second-hand desks, and we used them for many years. That's Fred. He was our engineer, civil engineer on the job. They were putting the lid on the septic tank there. Even the children seemed to help, or wanted to. I always kept a heap of sand for moving from one place to another, just so people wouldn't be idle. It's psychologically bad to see somebody standing idle, so we always kept something that could be moved for fellas who had nothing particularly to do. There's George. Watch the way he runs past the tree in order to save the film. Himself and Alan McGlinchey, Alan Smith put on the guttering along here. Now, neither was a plumber, but on the instructions of those who knew better, they did the job and did it very well. This is Arthur Barber. Arthur was an old man dying from cancer at this point in time, and he decided to become a Catholic, so I gave him instructions over several weeks. And he died afterwards. This is Dick Lamb, who is now living in Kalgoorlie. He was lecturing in Mount Lawley College of Advanced Education at the time, but he had learned his trade as an electrician in the Navy. Here we have Stelio Cotterley, who made the sign, Our Lady's Assumption, and fixed it to the wall. He did that free, gratis, and for nothing. George Mazek did that design of the Blessed Virgin on the side there with the 2 little angels to typify Our Lady's Assumption. Stelio had a helper there whose name I don't know, but one of his sons was here as well. You'll see him shortly. He's the boy who has now inherited the business. This was the day of the opening, and that was on the 28th of May 1967. Not the day the school opened. This was the official opening, and it was presided over by Bishop McKeown. The school itself was actually opened on the 6th of February, when the children started school for the first time. Later on you'll see them going in. Unfortunately, we transposed the films when we were joining them together, and the one that comes later was actually happened before. It had rained that morning, so you see the grounds are a little bit wet, because as I say, it was in June. This now was really the first day of school. Irene McCullough went and picked up sister, and here the first boys walking the plank. We put a plank down over the sand so they wouldn't dirty their shoes. Some of these have been married since, but of course they've all grown up. The odd child has died. Not very many, but at least 2 that I know of. That's Norma Bond, I think, from memory. And Martin Arts. That might be Norma Ryan, but I'm not sure. Dorothy Mazak.